Tae stood at the observation deck, her four eyes blinking in sequence as she studied the strange beings on the monitor. Humans, such an odd name for such odd creatures. Her iridescent exoskeleton caught the blue light from the screen, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the wall of the research vessel. Recording observations, day 12 of surveillance, she spoke into her data recorder. The humans continue to display contradictory traits. Their exterior covering appears completely inadequate for protection. Behind her, senior researcher Hansol clicked his mandibles in agreement. The Galaxy classification system has them listed as a Death World species, but I fail to see how they've survived this long. The Na'vi had been observing Earth for nearly a full cycle now, their ship hidden behind the small planet's moon. The Council of Sciences had commissioned this mission after detecting unusual radio signals from this previously uncharted system. Tae zoomed the camera onto a group of humans engaged in some form of physical activity on a grassy field. They were colliding with each other repeatedly, fighting over an oval-shaped object. "Look at this behavior," she noted. They deliberately crashed their bodies together with no protective gear on their soft limbs. How have they not gone extinct? Hansol moved closer, his tall, segmented body towering over Tae's smaller frame. Perhaps their internal structure compensates for the lack of external protection. Maybe, Tae murmured, not entirely convinced. She had spent her entire career studying evolution across different worlds, and everything about humans defied conventional patterns. Successful species from high gravity, hostile environments typically developed thick carapaces, redundant organs, or other robust defensive features. Humans had none of these. The main door to the observation deck slid open with a soft hiss, and Captain Min-jae entered. His exoskeleton, darkened with age and experience, gleamed dully under the lights. "The Council has reached a decision," he announced. "We will proceed with direct contact." Tae's antennae twitched with excitement. When? One planetary rotation from now. They wish to establish a scientific exchange, and they've requested a cultural attaché to join the initial delegation. Hansol stepped forward. "I volunteer my expertise." "Actually," Min-jae interrupted, "the Council specifically requested someone with less rigid thinking." His upper eyes fixed on Tae. "Someone who might better understand such an unusual species." Tae's heart nodes pulsed rapidly. "Me? But I'm just a junior researcher. You've shown remarkable insight in your observation reports. Your questions about their resilience, despite their apparent weaknesses, have intrigued the Council." Tae stood straighter, her exoskeleton plates shifting slightly with the movement. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. Still, nervousness fluttered through her secondary nervous system. What if they're hostile? Their entertainment broadcasts show considerable violence. Min-jae waved a limb dismissively. "Our defensive capabilities far exceed theirs. Besides, preliminary psychological assessments suggest they're more curious than dangerous." Later that evening, Tae sat in her quarters reviewing everything they'd learned about humans. Their medical data was particularly confusing. Their bones, internal calcium structures, broke easily yet healed themselves. Their skin tore but would grow back. They required constant intake of water and food, slept for a third of each day, and could survive in only a narrow temperature range. How did such fragile creatures become dominant on a world with such extreme conditions? She wondered aloud. Her personal assistant device chimed. Incoming transmission from Science Director Junho. The screen flickered to life, showing the elderly director, his once bright exoskeleton now faded to a pale blue. "Researcher Tae, congratulations on your selection." She lowered her head respectfully. "Thank you, Director. I'm honored but confused by the choice." Junho's mandibles clicked in what Na'vi recognized as amusement. Sometimes fresh perspectives see what experienced eyes miss. Your questions about human resilience have merit. If we understand how such soft creatures thrive in harsh conditions, we might learn something valuable. What should I focus on during initial contact? Their adaptability, Junho replied. Most species evolve specific solutions to environmental challenges. Humans seem to have taken a different path. They change their environment instead of themselves. It's unusual. After the call ended, Tae-ri couldn't sleep. She returned to the observation deck, now empty during the night cycle. The screen showed a night view of a human city, glowing with artificial lights. "Computer, show me human physical capabilities," she requested. The screen changed to display humans performing various activities, running long distances under a hot sun, swimming through freezing water, climbing vertical rock faces with minimal equipment, lifting objects twice their body weight. "How?" she whispered. "They look so soft." The next morning, the ship hummed with activity as the contact team prepared. Tae-ri was fitted with a translation device and briefed on human diplomatic protocols. "Remember," Min-ji instructed the team, "no sudden movements. Their visual systems are less advanced than ours, and they startle easily." Tae-ri nodded, mentally reviewing her training. Her specialized contact uniform felt strange, designed to appear less intimidating to the humans, with her sharp exoskeleton edges covered and her extra limbs concealed. As the delegation boarded the shuttle, Hansol approached her one last time. "Be careful, Tae-ri. Don't underestimate them just because they look weak." "Why would you say that?" she asked. His upper eyes narrowed. "Because any species that survives on a death world has dangers we might not recognize at first glance." The shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, heading toward the designated meeting point, a remote research facility where human scientists waited. Through the viewport, Tae-ri watched the landscape grow closer. Forests, mountains, oceans, so many different environments on one small planet. As they landed, Tae-ri felt both excitement and nervousness ripple through her body. She was about to meet creatures that defied everything she understood about evolution and survival. The shuttle door opened. Bright sunlight streamed in, and with it came the first breath of Earth air into her respiratory spiracles. It felt heavy, rich with unfamiliar compounds. "Ready?" Min-ji asked. Tae-ri straightened her posture, her scientific curiosity overwhelming her apprehension. Ready to learn what makes these soft creatures so surprisingly hard to kill. Tae-ri stepped off the shuttle ramp and immediately felt the full force of Earth's gravity pulling at her exoskeleton. Each movement required more effort than she was accustomed to on the ship or her home world. The air felt thick and wet in her breathing spiracles. Gravity differential at approximately 15% above Navi standard. She noted quietly into her personal recorder. Atmospheric composition rich in nitrogen and oxygen, with moisture levels that would classify as storm conditions at home. 5 humans stood waiting in a cautious distance. They wore identical white garments that Tae-ri recognized as laboratory attire from their broadcasts. One human stepped forward, taller than the others, with fur-like growth on its head tied back in a bundle. "Welcome to Earth Research Station 4, the human said, voice deep and steady. "I am Dr. Hyun-ki, lead xenobiologist. On behalf of the United Earth Council, we welcome the Navi delegation." Captain Min-gi performed the formal greeting gestures they had rehearsed, keeping his movements slow and deliberate to avoid startling the humans. "We bring knowledge and friendship," he responded through the translator. "May our species learn from one another." The formalities completed, the humans led them toward a large white building. Tae-ri noticed how smoothly the humans moved despite the gravity that strained her own limbs. She had expected them to be sluggish, given their apparent physical limitations. Inside the facility, Dr. Hyun-ki introduced his team. Tae-ri tried to memorize their names, but human facial features seemed so similar to her 4 eyes. How did they tell each other apart with only minor variations in their fur and skin coloration? "And this is Dr. Jaiho," Hyun-ki said, indicating a smaller human with short black head fur. "He will be your primary contact, researcher Tae-ri, as you requested a scientific exchange partner." Jaiho stepped forward, extending his hand in what Tae-ri recognized as their greeting ritual. After a moment's hesitation, She extended her upper right limb, carefully controlling her grip strength as they had practiced. Human flesh yielded too easily under Navi exoskeleton. I look forward to our collaboration, Jai-Ho said, smiling to show teeth, not a threat display as it would be for Navi, but a sign of friendliness in humans. Your questions about our physiology and the preliminary communications were most insightful. Tairi felt her color patches flush slightly blue with pride. I find your species fascinating. You appear physically vulnerable yet thrive in conditions that would challenge even the most hardy species. Jai-Ho laughed, a sound that still startled Tairi. We're tougher than we look. Come, let me show you the laboratory where we'll be working. As they walked through the facility, Tairi noticed the temperature increasing. Her sensors registered the change immediately. Is something wrong with your environmental systems? She asked. The temperature is rising. Jai-Ho looked confused for a moment, then understanding dawned on his face. No, we're approaching the greenhouse section. We keep it warmer for certain plants. Is it uncomfortable for you? Not uncomfortable, Tairi clarified. But on my world, such rapid temperature changes would signal dangerous weather patterns. Earth has many microclimates, Jai-Ho explained. Humans have adapted to function in a wide range of conditions, from near-freezing polar regions to deserts where temperatures exceed 40 degrees Celsius. Tairi's antennae twitched in surprise. Without technology assistance. With minimal technology in many cases. Here, let me show you something. Jai-Ho led her into the greenhouse, a vast space filled with growing plants. The air here was even more saturated with moisture, and Tairi felt her spiracles narrowing automatically to filter the excess. Several humans worked among the plants, wearing only light coverings despite the heat that now registered at levels Navy would consider emergency conditions. One human was lifting and moving large containers of soil, each appearing to weigh as much as the human itself. Isn't that dangerous? Tairi asked, pointing to the worker. The strain could damage their internal support structures. Jai-Ho smiled again. Our skeletal and muscular systems are designed to handle temporary stress. Watch. He approached a rack holding several similar containers. To Tairi's astonishment, Jai-Ho lifted one with apparent ease, carried it several steps, then set it down gently. That container masses approximately 35 kilograms, he explained, about half my body weight, within safe lifting parameters for a human my size. Tairi moved closer to examine the container, then attempted to lift it herself. Despite her exoskeleton's strength, the awkward shape and Earth's gravity made it challenging. Her color patches flushed deep blue with effort. Impressive, she admitted, setting it down. Your muscles must be extremely dense to generate such force without external support. As they continued the tour, they entered a room filled with strange equipment. Metal frames, flexible surfaces, and various mechanical devices. This is our physical training facility, Jai-Ho explained. Humans require regular exercise to maintain optimal function. Tairi watched in fascination as humans pushed and pulled against resistance, lifted weighted objects, and performed repetitive movements that seemed to have no practical purpose. Why do you deliberately strain your bodies this way? She asked. Human physiology improves with use, Jai-Ho explained. Unlike your exoskeleton, which is fixed until your next molting cycle, our muscles and bones strengthen in response to stress. Without regular challenge, they weaken. A loud crash interrupted their conversation. Across the room, a metal frame had collapsed, pinning a human to the floor. Without hesitation, Jai-Ho rushed over. Tairi followed, alarmed by the potential injury to this soft-bodied creature. To her amazement, Jai-Ho gripped the fallen equipment, a mass of metal that would require at least 2 Navi to move safely, and lifted it enough for the trapped human to slide free. Are you hurt, Sunwoo? Jai-Ho asked the fallen human. Just bruised, Sunwoo replied, standing without assistance. The locking mechanism failed. Tairi's scientific mind raced with questions. How did you lift that alone? The mass must exceed safe parameters. Jai-ho rubbed his upper limbs. Adrenaline. When humans perceive emergency situations, our bodies release chemicals that temporarily enhance our physical capabilities. You can chemically override your physical limitations. Taeree's antennae quivered with excitement. Is this common among your species? Universal, Jai-ho confirmed, though the effect is temporary and carries a recovery cost. Later, in her assigned quarters, Taeree recorded her observations. Humans possess multiple physiological adaptations that compensate for their lack of protective exoskeleton. Their strength-to-mass ratio exceeds initial estimates. Most surprisingly, they appear to thrive on physical stress that would damage most species, actually growing stronger through controlled damage and recovery. This explains much about their survival on a high-gravity world with extreme climate variations. She paused her recording, gazing out at the Earth night through her window. The stars look different from this perspective, but the questions they inspired remain the same. Perhaps, she continued, what appeared as weakness is actually a different kind of strength. The ability to bend without breaking, to adapt rather than resist. What would the Na'vi learn if we studied this approach more deeply? Outside her window, the light rain began to fall. Another Earth phenomenon she had yet to experience directly. Tomorrow, she decided, she would ask Jai-ho to let her feel the rain on her exoskeleton. Another small step toward understanding these remarkable soft creatures. Taeree watched the humans through the clear barrier of the training room. Their movements fascinated her, fluid, quick, and surprisingly powerful. For 3 Earth weeks, she had studied their physiology in the lab alongside Jai-ho, but understanding came slowly. Numbers and scans could not fully explain what she witnessed. "What are they doing?" she asked Jai-ho, who stood beside her. "That's our martial arts program," he explained. "Combat training, though mostly for exercise and discipline now." Taeree's upper eyes narrowed. Combat, but they wear no protection. The humans inside wore only thin fabric coverings as they took turns throwing each other to padded mats. One small female human flipped a much larger male over her shoulder with apparent ease. The male landed with a thud that Taeree felt through her sensitive foot pads. "Don't they break?" she asked. Jai-ho laughed. "Sometimes. Broken bones, bruises, sprains, all part of training. We heal." An idea formed in Taeree's mind. After weeks of laboratory work, perhaps a more direct approach would answer her questions about human resilience. "I want to try," she announced. Jai-ho looked startled. "The martial arts? Are you sure? Your exoskeleton might make some movements difficult." "Precisely why I should attempt it. I need to understand through experience, not just observation." The next day, Taeree stood nervously on the edge of the training mat. She wore a modified version of the human Jai uniform, adapted for her 4 arms and different body shape. The other students, all human, watched her with curious expressions. The instructor, a compact human named Jun-seo, approached her with a respectful bow. "Welcome, researcher Taeree. Jai-ho explained your interest. We are honored to have you join us." Taeree attempted to return the bow, though her segmented body made the movement awkward. "Thank you for allowing me to participate. I hope my physical differences won't disrupt your teaching." Jun-seo smiled. "Adaptation is part of martial arts. Now, let's begin with basic falls." The first lesson proved more challenging than Taeree had anticipated. The humans practiced break falls, controlled ways to hit the ground without injury. For creatures with exoskeletons, falling was always dangerous. Na'vi avoided it at all costs. "Bend your joints as you go down," Jun-seo instructed as Taeree attempted her first fall. "Spread the impact across your body." Taeree tried, but her exoskeleton plates limited her flexibility. She hit the mat with a solid thunk that sent uncomfortable vibrations through her body. "That's okay," Jun-seo encouraged. "Your structure is different. We'll find what works for you." After an hour of practice, Taeree began to understand the principles. if not master the techniques. Her body couldn't move like the humans, but she learned to redirect her momentum in safer ways. Good progress, Jun Seo said as the class ended. Tomorrow, we'll try some basic throws. That night, Tairi's body ached in unfamiliar ways. She recorded her observations. Human martial arts emphasize using minimal force for maximum effect. They compensate for their physical limitations through leverage and momentum. Most surprisingly, they deliberately practice falling, something my species avoids as potentially fatal. The next day brought new challenges. Jun Seo paired Tairi with a human named Minji, a female smaller than Tairi, but with quick, precise movements. We'll practice a simple hip throw, Jun Seo demonstrated with another student. The principle is to use your opponent's momentum against them. Minji bowed to Tairi. Don't worry about hurting me. I've been training for years. Tairi hesitated. Her exoskeleton made her significantly heavier and harder than any human. I should let you attempt the throw first. Minji nodded and took a standard grip on Tairi's modified guy. Come forward like you're pushing me. Tairi moved as instructed, expecting little from the smaller human. In a fluid motion that happened too quickly to track, Minji turned, dipped her body, and suddenly Tairi found herself airborne. She hit the mat hard, unprepared for the throw despite yesterday's practice. Are you okay? Minji asked, concerned. Tairi rose carefully, checking her limbs for damage. Nothing broken, though her dignity felt bruised. How did you do that? Your muscle mass is approximately 40% less than mine. Minji smiled. It's not about strength. It's about center of gravity and leverage. Your weight actually helped me throw you. Now you try. For the next 20 minutes, Tairi attempted to replicate the technique. Her rigid body couldn't match Minji's fluid movements, and her attempts to throw the human failed repeatedly. Frustration colored her patches a deep orange. Your body works differently, Jun Seo observed, coming over to help. Instead of trying to move like Minji, use your natural structure. Your lower center of gravity and forearms give you advantages she doesn't have. Jun Seo guided Tairi through a modified version of the technique that played to her strengths. With his guidance, she finally managed to unbalance Minji, though the throw lacked the smooth arc of the human version. There, Jun Seo said encouragingly. You see, different bodies, different approaches, same principle. As the training continued over the following days, Tairi discovered something unexpected. She was enjoying herself. The physical challenge, so different from her normal scientific work, awakened new awareness of her own body's capabilities and limitations. One morning in the third week, Jun Seo announced a change to their routine. Today we'll practice light sparring. Tairi, would you be comfortable trying this? Tairi felt a flutter of both nervousness and excitement. Yes, I would like to try. Jun Seo paired her with Du Yun, a tall male human with patient eyes. Remember, this is about learning, not winning. Light contact only. The sparring began with formal bows. Du Yun moved carefully at first, clearly concerned about Tairi's different physiology. Tairi tried to apply the techniques she'd learned, but found her movements too slow compared to the human's quick steps. You're thinking too much, Du Yun advised after easily sidestepping her attempt at a throw. Feel the movement instead. Tairi tried again, focusing less on perfectly executing the technique and more on responding to Du Yun's movement. When he stepped forward, she used her lower arms to grip his sleeve while her upper body shifted to create leverage. To her surprise, Du Yun lost his balance and had to step quickly to avoid falling. Good, he said, genuine pleasure in his voice. You're adapting. The exchange continued, with Tairi finding more success as she stopped trying to move like a human and instead incorporated her natural Navi movements into the martial arts principles. Her forearms, initially an awkward difference, became an advantage for certain grips and controls. After class, Tairi's entire body hummed with exertion, but her color patches glowed a satisfied blue. Your species' approach to physical limitations is fascinating, she told Jiho as they walked back to the research section. Instead of evolving protective features, you've developed techniques to compensate. Jiho nodded. That's the human way. We can't change our bodies quickly, so we change our behavior, our tools, our environment. And you deliberately practice failure, falling, being thrown, to learn how to fail safely, Tairi added. My species would never consider such an approach. Perhaps that's something your people could learn from mine, Jiho suggested. Sometimes strength comes from knowing how to fall and get back up. Later, recording her daily observations, Tairi added a personal note. I begin to understand that what I perceived as softness in humans is actually a different kind of hardness, not the rigid strength of an exoskeleton, but the resilient strength of adaptability. They bend where we would break, and in that bending, find ways to survive that never occurred to my species. I wonder what other lessons these soft creatures might teach me about different forms of strength. The first tremor hit while Tairi was helping Jiho calibrate sensors in the geology lab. The floor shook beneath them, sending small items sliding off tables. Jiho immediately straightened, his body tensing. Earthquake, he said, voice suddenly serious. Level 4, maybe 5. Tairi's antennae twitched nervously. She had read about Earth's tectonic instability, but never experienced it. Is this dangerous? Before Jiho could answer, a second tremor hit, much stronger than the first. The lights flickered, then went out completely. Emergency lighting activated, casting the lab in an eerie red glow. An alarm blared through the facility, followed by a calm voice over the speaker system. Attention all personnel. Earthquake emergency protocols activated. Magnitude 7.2 detected. Proceed to safety zones. This is not a drill. Jiho moved toward the door. Come on, we need to get to the central hub. It's reinforced. Tairi followed, her exoskeleton clicking against the floor as she moved. The corridor outside was filled with humans moving quickly but orderly. No one screamed or panicked, which surprised Tairi. On her world, such a natural disaster would cause immediate distress. Another violent shake sent Tairi stumbling against the wall. Her harder exterior scraped the surface, leaving marks. How frequently does this happen? She asked, steadying herself. Major quakes. Every few years in this region, Jiho explained as they walked. We're on a fault line. Yet you built a research facility here. We build everywhere. We adapt to the environment rather than avoiding it. They reached a large central room where other staff were gathering. Captain Minjai and the other Navi delegates were already there, their color patches showing distress patterns of dark purple and orange. Tairi, Minjai called out. Are you damaged? I am functional, she responded, joining her group. Dr. Hyunki was organizing the humans, directing them to different tasks with calm efficiency. Some operated communication equipment, others checked structural displays on tablets, and a team prepared medical supplies. The East Wing sensors show structural compromise, a human technician reported. Section E7 has partial collapse. Hyunki's expression tightened. Any personnel trapped? Yes, sir. Greenhouse team. At least 4 staff members. Prepare rescue equipment, Hyunki ordered. Team 2 with me. Jiho turned to Tairi. I need to go with them. Please stay here where it's safe. Tairi watched as a group of humans gathered tools and equipment with practiced speed. Their faces showed concern but remained focused. She made a decision quickly. I'm coming too, she told Jiho. My exoskeleton provides protection your bodies lack. I can help. Jiho hesitated, then nodded. Stay close to me. Minjai stepped forward. Researcher Tairi, this is not advisable. Your safety is my responsibility, Tairi interrupted. This is an opportunity to observe human crisis response directly. I'm going. They moved through corridors where ceiling panels had fallen and pipes had burst. The further east they went, the worse the damage became. Aftershocks continued to shake the building, each one sending dust and small debris raining down. When they reached the greenhouse section, Tae-ri understood why Hyun-ki had looked so concerned. Part of the ceiling had collapsed, bringing support beams down with it. Water from broken irrigation pipes sprayed across the room, and the humid air was thick with dust. Life signs detected, a technician called out, holding a scanning device. Beyond that fallen section, Hyun-ki assessed the situation quickly. We need to create a stable path through. That main support beam is blocking access. Tae-ri studied the fallen beam. It was metal, at least 4 meters long and extremely heavy. On her world, such a task would require lifting equipment. We need the portable jack, someone suggested. No time, Hyun-ki responded. They could be injured. We do this manually. Team lift on my count. To Tae-ri's astonishment, 8 humans positioned themselves around the massive beam. At Hyun-ki's signal, they lifted together, muscles straining, faces reddening with effort. The beam rose slowly. How is this possible? Tae-ri whispered to Jae-ho, who stood ready to join the lifting team. Adrenaline and necessity, he replied. In emergencies, humans can exceed normal physical limits. We need something to brace it once we've lifted it high enough. Hyun-ki called out, voice tight with exertion. Tae-ri realized she could help. Her exoskeleton's strength, combined with its hardness, made her ideal for this task. She moved forward quickly. I can support it, she announced, positioning herself under the beam as the humans raised it higher. Hyun-ki looked surprised but nodded. On 3, transfer weight slowly to our Navi colleague. When they shifted the beam, Tae-ri felt its enormous weight settle across her upper body. Her exoskeleton creaked but held. The pressure sensors throughout her body screamed warnings, but she maintained position. Secure, she managed to say. Proceed with rescue. With the beam supported, rescue team members quickly navigated the opening to reach the trapped greenhouse workers. Minutes later, they began helping injured humans through the passage. Tae-ri remained perfectly still, becoming a living support column. One trapped human, a botanist named Yang, had a badly broken leg. As they carefully moved him past Tae-ri, he reached out and touched her arm gently. Thank you, he said, pain evident in his voice yet somehow smiling. After 23 minutes by her internal clock, the last survivor was evacuated. Only then did Hyun-ki signal for support struts to be positioned. Ready to transfer load to mechanical supports, he told Tae-ri. You can release on my mark. When finally freed from the weight, Tae-ri's limbs trembled from the extended strain. Jae-ho helped steady her as they retreated to safer ground. Are you all right? He asked, genuine concern in his eyes. Tae-ri ran a quick internal diagnostic. My exoskeleton has stress fractures in 2 places, but no critical damage. I will recover. Back in the central hub, medical staff treated the injured while engineering teams assessed the facility damage. Captain Min-jae approached Tae-ri, his antennae twitching with mixed emotions. Your actions were both foolish and admirable, he said quietly. You risked your exoskeleton integrity without proper authorization. I observed something important, Tae-ri replied. Something our reports and data couldn't show. And what was that? Tae-ri's color patches shifted to a thoughtful blue. Humans become stronger in crisis, not individually, but collectively. They coordinate instinctively, each taking part in tasks that benefit the group, and they exceed their normal physical capabilities when others are in danger. Later that night, as the facility's emergency generators hummed and repair teams worked, Tae-ri sat in the makeshift medical area. A human doctor had applied a temporary hardening compound to her fractured exoskeleton sections. Jae-ho brought her a container of nutrient solution. The communications array is working again. Your captain has reported the situation to your council. Will your people abandon this facility now? Tae-ri asked. It seems dangerously unstable. Jai-Ho shook his head. We'll rebuild, stronger than before. We learn from each disaster. Tae-ri considered this. On my world, we would relocate to avoid future risk. Different approaches, Jai-Ho said with a small smile. Neither wrong, just different. Today I understood something about your species, Tae-ri said softly. Your softness, what I first saw as weakness, allows you to bend without breaking. To work together in ways my people's rigid structures don't permit. Perhaps there is strength in softness that I never considered. Outside, the aftershocks had finally stopped. Earth, like its human inhabitants, had released its energy and now settled into recovery. Tae-ri found the parallel oddly comforting as she began drafting notes for what would become her most important research report yet. Tae-ri stood at the edge of the track, watching the humans run their laps in the early morning sunlight. 2 weeks had passed since the earthquake. The research facility was mostly repaired now, with only the most damaged sections still under construction. Her own exoskeleton had healed too, the stress fractures healed with a combination of medical compound and her body's natural regeneration. Jai-Ho jogged toward her, his breathing slightly elevated but controlled. Sweat glistened on his skin, another fascinating human adaptation Tae-ri had studied. The liquid cooling system that helped regulate their temperature was remarkably efficient, if messy. Ready to try? Jai-Ho asked, handing her a water bottle. Humans were always sharing water, a habit born from their constant need for hydration. Tae-ri's color patches flickered with nervous blue. I've calculated that running will put significant stress on my joint sections. Just 1 lap, Jai-Ho encouraged. Slow and steady. You've been studying us for months. Time to experience human exercise firsthand. Tae-ri had prepared for this. She wore a modified running outfit designed for her 4-limbed body, with special cushioning at her joint points. The facility's medical team had checked her exoskeleton integrity and approved the activity. Still, she hesitated. On my world, we conserve energy. Deliberate exertion without purpose would be considered wasteful. Jai-Ho smiled. The purpose is to understand. Isn't that why you came to Earth? He was right, of course. Her final report to the Navi Science Council was almost complete, lacking only this last experiential data point. With a deep breath through her spiracles, Tae-ri stepped onto the track. Moving her body into a running position felt awkward. Her legs were designed for stable, efficient walking, not this bouncing human motion. Jai-Ho demonstrated a slow jog beside her. Small steps at first. Find your rhythm. Tae-ri began moving, conscious of each impact as her feet hit the track. The sensation vibrated through her exoskeleton in a way that felt both alarming and strangely pleasant. After half a lap, her breathing rate increased significantly. This is quite inefficient, she managed between breaths. Efficiency isn't the point, Jai-Ho replied. How do you feel? Tae-ri ran an internal diagnostic. Heart nodes pumping at 162% of baseline. Oxygen intake elevated. Internal temperature rising. She paused. And there's something else. A chemical response I can't identify. Jai-Ho grinned. Endorphins, probably. Your species must have something similar. Natural reward chemicals released during physical exertion. By the time they completed the lap, Tae-ri's color patches had shifted to a bright, vibrant blue she rarely displayed. She slowed to a stop, her legs trembling slightly from the unfamiliar activity. That was interesting, she admitted, accepting another water bottle from Jai-Ho. I understand now why humans engage in this seemingly pointless activity. The physiological response creates a positive feedback loop. We call it runner's high, Jai-Ho said. It helped our ancestors hunt and migrate long distances. Later that day, Tae-ri sat in her quarters, finalizing her report. The document had grown far beyond her original expectations. What began as a study of human physical vulnerability had evolved into an exploration of alternative evolutionary strategies. Her findings would challenge many Navi assumptions about adaptive success. She read over her conclusion one more time. Human resilience defies standard classification. Their apparent softness, lack of protective external structures, limited natural weapons, high-maintenance biological systems, initially suggests vulnerability. However, this study reveals these same features enable unique adaptive advantages. 1. Flexibility and fine motor control surpassing any exoskeleton-based species. 2. Rapid healing and tissue regeneration. 3. Extreme environmental adaptability through behavioral rather than physical evolution. 4. Psychological resilience through social bonding. 5. Crisis response capabilities that temporarily override physical limitations. Most significantly, humans demonstrate that hardness is not the only evolutionary solution to survival challenges. Their softness allows adaptability that rigid structures cannot achieve. They bend where we would break, heal where we would remain damaged, and transform weakness into strength through collective action and technological innovation. This researcher recommends a complete revision of the galactic classification system to account for these alternative survival strategies. The human approach to evolutionary challenges offers valuable insights that could benefit Navi development in medicine, material science, and social organization. A soft chime indicated someone at her door. Tae-Ri saved the document and called, "Enter." Captain Min-Gai stepped inside, his exoskeleton freshly polished for the upcoming departure ceremony. The Navi delegation would leave Earth tomorrow, their 3-month mission complete. "Your final report is due for transmission," he reminded her. "Just finished," Tae-Ri replied, transferring the file to his datapad. "It's more extensive than originally planned." Min-Ji scanned the introduction, his antennae twitching with interest. "Your conclusions are quite revolutionary. The Council may find them challenging. They are supported by extensive data," Tae-Ri noted, "and direct experience." Min-Ji's color patches showed a mix of concern and respect. "I observe your integration with the humans. You adopted many of their practices, their martial arts, their running, even their emergency response protocols. Some might question if you've become too influenced by their perspective." Tae-Ri considered this carefully. "Captain, when I arrived, I saw only their softness as weakness. I failed to recognize their hardness because it manifested differently than ours. Isn't overcoming such perceptual limitations the purpose of scientific exchange?" Min-Ji's colors shifted to a thoughtful blue. "Perhaps." He paused, then added, "The Council has received your request for an extended stay." Tae-Ri's heart nodes beat faster. "Have they decided?" "They have. Your request is approved for an additional 6 Earth months. Your insights have proven valuable enough to warrant deeper study." Min-Ji's antennae twitched with what might have been amusement. "Though I suspect your interest is not purely scientific anymore." Tae-Ri's patches flushed with embarrassment. "I've developed professional respect for my human colleagues." "Of course," Min-Ji replied, not quite concealing his skepticism. "Well, I must prepare for tomorrow's ceremony. The rest of us depart at 800. After he left, Tae-Ri stood at her window, watching the sunset paint Earth's sky in colors her 4 eyes could appreciate better than human vision. Her thoughts drifted to the coming months, the marathon training Jaiho had suggested, the advanced martial arts classes, the planned expedition to study human adaptation in Earth's varied environments. A message appeared on her personal device. "Running group, 600 tomorrow. 5 kilometers. You in?" Jaiho. 6 weeks ago, she would have found the invitation incomprehensible. Running for no purpose other than to run. Subjecting her exoskeleton to stress without practical necessity. Now, she understood. "I'll be there," she replied. "Though I may require rest intervals." His response came quickly. "That's how we all started. Soft bodies have to work up to hardness." Tae-Ri smiled, a human expression she'd adopted unconsciously. The apparent contradiction in his words captured everything she had learned. Softness and hardness were not opposites but complements. The humans, with their soft exteriors and hard determination, had taught her that rigidity was not the only form of strength. Tomorrow, the main delegation would leave, but Tiri would stay, running on soft feet across Earth's surface, learning more each day about the remarkable hardness hidden within these surprisingly complex soft beings.